The rain, a relentless London drizzle, always seemed to amplify the drama within the walls of Kensington Palace. It was more than just weather. It was a constant, somber soundtrack to the lives of the royals, a visual reminder of the burdens they carried. And in 1997, those burdens were almost unbearable. The death of Princess Diana hung like a shroud over everything. The world mourned, and the royal family, particularly Prince Charles, felt the full force of public grief and anger. Charles, still reeling from the Parisian tragedy, found himself increasingly isolated. The public's adoration of Diana had cast a long shadow, one that seemed to engulf him entirely. He was the villain, the man who had broken the fairy tale, and forgiveness felt impossibly distant. It was in this atmosphere of profound sorrow and public condemnation that Camilla Parker Bowles stepped forward, not as a lover, but as a lifeline. Camilla, often underestimated, was a woman of shrewd intelligence and unwavering resolve. She was no starry-eyed romantic. She understood the game of power and influence. While the world saw a scandalous affair, Camilla saw an opportunity. She recognized Charles's vulnerability, his desperate need for support, and she positioned herself as his rock, his confidant, the one person who truly understood him. In the aftermath of Diana's death, Charles was a broken man, questioning his ability to carry on. "I don't know if I can keep doing this," he confessed to Camilla, his voice raw with despair. "They'll never forgive me or us." Camilla, ever the pragmatist, seized the moment. She offered him comfort, yes, but more importantly, she offered him a solution. "You can't let the past imprison you," she said, her voice smooth and persuasive. "Diana is gone. You're still the prince, the future of the monarchy. I understand that weight. I know how it isolates you." These weren't empty words of sympathy. They were calculated moves in a long game. Camilla understood that Charles's grief was a chink in his armor, a weakness she could exploit. She wasn't interested in fairy tale love. She craved influence, control, a position of power within the royal hierarchy, and she knew that Charles, in his vulnerable state, was her path to achieving that ambition. She presented herself as the steady hand he needed, the one person who could navigate the treacherous waters of public opinion and palace intrigue. "You need someone beside you, Charles," she continued, "not just someone who cares for you, but someone who understands who you are and what your role demands. I can't erase everything you've lost, but I can stand with you through whatever comes." Charles, desperate for solace, clung to her words. "When you're here," he whispered, "I don't feel completely abandoned." And with that, Camilla solidified her position, not as a lover, but as an indispensable ally, a strategic partner in the Game of Thrones. The world saw a couple weathering a storm, but behind closed doors, a power dynamic was shifting, one that would have profound consequences for the future of the monarchy. Camilla had planted the seeds of her ambition, and as the years passed, those seeds would blossom into a formidable force, one that even the most astute observers failed to fully comprehend. Years passed, and the monarchy under Charles's reign seemed to stabilize, at least on the surface. Camilla, now the Duchess of Cornwall, played her part to perfection. A supportive wife, a patron of charities, a calming presence beside the often awkward king. The public, though never fully embracing her, grudgingly accepted her. After all, she was making Charles happy, or so it seemed. But behind the carefully orchestrated photo ops and the polite smiles, Camilla was subtly, relentlessly consolidating her power. Charles, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps out of genuine affection, perhaps simply out of a desire for an easy life, ceded more and more control to her. He trusted her judgment, relied on her advice, and allowed her to shape the inner circle of the royal court. And shape it she did. Gone were the old guard, the loyal retainers who had served the monarchy for decades. In their place came Camilla's people, her allies, her loyalists, individuals whose primary allegiance was not to the crown but to her. Lawyers, PR gurus, financial advisors, all carefully vetted and handpicked to serve her agenda. Princess Anne, ever the astute observer, saw the shift. She saw the subtle power plays, the dismissals, the appointments, the way Camilla was quietly dismantling the established order, and she grew increasingly concerned. Anne, a woman of unwavering loyalty and fierce independence, was not one to stand idly by while the monarchy was being manipulated. William, too, felt the unease. He saw his father growing increasingly isolated, surrounded by Camilla's people, cut off from the advisors he had trusted for years. He saw Camilla's influence growing, her control tightening, and he knew that something was terribly wrong. The ghost of Diana seemed to whisper warnings in his ear, reminding him of the dangers of unchecked ambition. When Charles fell ill, the situation reached a crisis point. With the king incapacitated, Camilla stepped into the void, assuming more and more of his duties, making decisions that would have far-reaching consequences for the monarchy. The palace buzzed with rumors, whispers of a power grab, fears of a constitutional crisis. Anne and William knew they had to act. They confronted Charles, laying out their concerns, presenting the evidence they had gathered, the questionable financial transactions, the secret meetings, the growing influence of Camilla's allies. But Charles, blinded by affection and perhaps by a deep-seated fear of being alone, refused to listen. He defended Camilla, dismissed their concerns, and accused them of disloyalty. "She's the only one who truly understands me," he insisted, his voice weak but firm. "She's the only one I can trust." Anne and William left Sandringham feeling defeated and desperate. They knew that Charles was too far gone, too deeply under Camilla's spell to see the truth. If they were going to save the monarchy, they would have to do it on their own. The battle lines were drawn. On one side, Camilla, the queen, the master manipulator, with her network of loyalists and her ruthless ambition. On the other, Anne and William, the defenders of the crown, with their unwavering loyalty and their determination to protect the institution they had sworn to serve. The fate of the monarchy hung in the balance, and the storm clouds were gathering. The clock was ticking, and William knew it. He couldn't storm the palace like some medieval knight. This was a game of chess played with institutions, reputations, and the very fabric of the nation. He needed proof, undeniable evidence that would shatter Camilla's carefully constructed facade. Sir Edward, ever the meticulous accountant, was their ace in the hole. He dove into the labyrinthine world of offshore accounts, tracing the flow of royal funds with a forensic precision that would make even the most seasoned investigators envious. It was a paper trail deliberately obscured, a web of shell corporations and coded transactions designed to hide the truth. But Edward was relentless, following every lead, piecing together the puzzle one painstaking step at a time. Meanwhile, Lady Margaret, with her decades of experience in the charitable sector, quietly reached out to her contacts, probing for any irregularities, any hint of misappropriation. She knew the charities relied on royal patronage, and she used that leverage to gently pry information from those who might otherwise remain silent. It was a delicate dance, a whisper campaign conducted in hushed tones and veiled language. Anne, ever the pragmatist, focused on the palace itself. She cultivated relationships with long-serving staff, the loyal footmen, the discreet secretaries, the silent observers who had witnessed everything but said nothing. She knew they held the key to unlocking Camilla's secrets, the inside information that would corroborate William's suspicions. The breakthrough came late one night, a coded email intercepted by William's trusted IT contact. It was a message intended for one of Camilla's financial advisors detailing a transfer of funds to a previously unknown account in the Cayman Islands. The amount was staggering, enough to raise serious questions about Camilla's intentions. William knew this was it. This was the smoking gun he needed. He immediately contacted the journalist he had been preparing, a seasoned reporter with a reputation for integrity and a deep understanding of the royal family. He laid out the evidence, the financial records, the intercepted emails, the testimonies from palace insiders. The journalist, initially skeptical, was quickly convinced. The evidence was irrefutable, the pattern of deception undeniable. He agreed to publish the story, but only under strict conditions of anonymity, fearing the repercussions from Camilla's powerful allies in the media. The story broke the following morning, a bombshell that rocked the monarchy to its core. The headline screamed of financial irregularities, secret accounts, and a queen manipulating the royal purse for her own gain. The public was outraged. The media went into a frenzy, and the palace descended into chaos. Camilla, caught completely off guard, lashed out, accusing William and Anne of treachery, of conspiring to undermine her position. She mobilized her network of loyalists, issuing denials, spreading disinformation, attempting to discredit the story and silence its sources. But the truth was out, and it couldn't be contained. The public demanded answers, the politicians called for investigations, and even Charles, finally awakened from his slumber, began to question Camilla's motives. The carefully constructed facade had crumbled, revealing the ruthless ambition that lay beneath. The game was far from over, but the tide had turned. William and Anne had struck a decisive blow, exposing Camilla's deception and setting in motion a chain of events that would ultimately determine the fate of the monarchy. The storm was raging, and the future remained uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, there was a glimmer of hope.